Remember when Harvey Whippleman won the women's championship?
Do you remember when Tiger Ali Singh didn't know who Drew Carey was?
Remember when Drake Maverick relieved himself all of Bobby Roode's robe?
We were there.
We were there for that.
It was the worst Monday Night Raw I remember ever seeing. My name is Sylvia Nyxx, presenting you with Paul Heyman realness. And my co-hostess tonight is the reigning, defending, undisputed queen of YouTube, giving you Jim Cornette, ladies and gentlemen, Jaymes Mansfield.
Oh my God, don't interrupt me ever again, but that was great. That was great.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, professional wrestlers don't always have the proper charisma to get themselves over. So in today's episode, we're talking about the people who helped them along the way.
The designated drivers for wrestlers, you could say.
The top 5 are our picks, at least, for the top 5 best professional wrestling managers, only on Queens of the Ring. Now, number 5 is a legend, an icon, somebody who paved the way for what it would be like for professional wrestling managers for decades to come. We're talking, of course, of the late, great, classy Freddie Blassie.
Now, Freddie Blassie is known as a pioneer in the world of managing. He was known for carrying a cane and whacking people with it.
He was known for outlandish suit coats.
And if you ever crossed him, he'd call you a pencil neck geek. What the hell is that?
It's you.
Oh.
You're a pencil neck geek. Now, Freddie Blassie had managed over 35 of the industry's all-time greats. In his later years, you might know him for managing more recognizable names such as Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik,
Adrian Adonis,
and many, many more.
Tons of everybody.
But most importantly, Freddie Blassie really did. He was so charismatic and could get anything over. Being a former professional wrestler himself, he knew the ins and outs of the industry, and he knew what it took to get people over.
He could get just about anything over except for music. That didn't quite go so well for him.
Freddie Blassie might be classy, but I like my wrestling just a little trashier.
Oh yes, today we are going to the wrong side of the tracks with this next guy, folks.
Do you guys remember ECW? I certainly do. This guy would make even a Rob Van Dam match hard to watch. We're talking about Bill Alfonso.
Now, I hate to blow the whistle on you.
I hate you.
Bill Alfonso is incredible.
He is. He was like the precursor to the modern internet incel. Just a dude in his 40s who looks like he's never gotten laid. Bill Alfonso.
Not an incel.
Tell me he doesn't look like one.
He is totally the definition of an incel.
He would be.
He is on 4chan right now.
He probably is.
Remember when he was on the Judge Show with Missy Hyatt?
No.
Yes, he was on like a People's Court episode with Missy Hyatt.
Of all the years I've wasted watching daytime television, I missed Missy Hyatt and Bill Alfonso.
I don't know if it was a local thing, like maybe he had to be in Philly for it.
Oh my
He
God.
was definitely on an episode.
I'm here for it. Bill Alfonso, to me, what made him stand out is for years, I remember him being a referee in WCW. And then when he got to ECW, he was not respected because his original character was a referee who would go by the books, which is something that ECW didn't do. So anytime a disqualification would happen, he would call the match, which, if you've ever seen a wrestling crowd in Philadelphia,
ooh, that is a heat-seeking missile right
there. You don't do that. Bill Alfonso started managing Taz and got over as a face because people loved Taz at the time, and Taz was ECW. And then, I want to say it was barely legal, he stripped himself of his Taz allegiance and aligned himself with two of the all-time greats of ECW, and unfortunately after ECW, Rob Van Dam was good. But
WWE creative gets a hold of people. Things just don't go your way.
Oh. But he aligned himself with Sabu and Rob Van Dam. So what they did is, like, Bill Alfonso, in order to get heat on people who would otherwise never get booed, he would just make himself the most annoying little fucker.
I distinctly remember him just bouncing around the ring, blowing that freaking whistle.
Oh, nails on a chalkboard. My favorite wrestling match of all time is actually Jerry Lynn versus Rob Van Dam. And to this day, because of how much I freaking hated Bill Alfonso. It's hard for me to watch. Ugh.
My favorite Bill Alfonso match has to be something that wasn't even officially a match. It just kind of happened after all chaos broke loose. It was when him and Beulah broke out into a fight.
Oh, it's so hard to watch.
And it just became a match, and it is like so brutal. It's like a bloodbath on each end.
Beulah McGillicuddy destroyed him. I remember reading a shoot interview with Paul Heyman, where Paul Heyman said that Bill Alfonso in this moment lost a third of the blood in his body.
Oh, and you can definitely see it.
Oh, yeah.
But they just were going back and forth. Like, I've never seen somebody just potato a woman so hard like that.
Well,
and it worked because he's, like you said, he's an incel.
He's
so
a
it's like,
prick, yeah. And Beulah McGillicuddy, if she can brutalize assholes like Bill Alfonso, I want to meet her and buy her a drink. Girl, you deserve it. Please continue doing that.
Maybe she owns McGillicuddy's downtown.
Well, do you know she's married to Tommy Dreamer?
Yeah, they have babies and stuff.
Real children. Speaking of women in the ring, we're going to count down some of our favorite, not quite managers, but valets.
The lovely faces that helped guide hunky wrestlers to the ring and sometimes got a little more involved than they should have.
Sunny.
Marlena.
Cloudy.
Sunshine.
Sean Stasiak is meat from the Pretty Mean Sisters stable.
Oh, good one.
Who could forget the First Lady of Wrestling, Miss Elizabeth?
Or the real First Lady of Wrestling, Missy Hyatt.
And Miss Elizabeth's number one enemy, sensational Sherri Martel.
We got to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we have to.
So Macho Man and Liz, they split. And he dumped her for Sherri Martel.
This was around the time where Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage were feuding, and Randy Savage had just lost the WWF Championship because Hulk Hogan was actually kind of a dick in this storyline.
Yeah, he was. He's horrible. Because, like, he was basically, like, doing that will I, won't I with Miss Elizabeth while Macho Man was, like, still with her in the storyline.
Don't get me wrong, Macho Man was a little jealous of this, but at the same time, this is the 1980s, and Miss Elizabeth was Macho Man's girl.
And the only girl.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it was very clear that Hulk Hogan had designs on Miss Elizabeth. And eventually, Macho Man became overcome with emotion and dropped her and replaced her with Sensational Sherri.
Yes, and Sensational Queen Sherri was an interesting valet. I almost wouldn't even call her a valet because her
she did
duties,
a lot.
Yeah, it was almost as if she took on the full managerial role, which is something that women in the 1980s weren't doing in professional wrestling.
And these great promos where she would just go head to head with Macho Man, shouting right back at him.
Oh, yeah. She was, honestly, if they came down to throwing blows, I think Queen Sherri might beat the Macho King Savage.
Oh, but remember how the storyline with Sherri and Liz ended?
No.
No, you don't?
I don't. Refresh my memory.
It was so poignant because Miss Elizabeth was in the audience, and then Sherri Martel was pissed off because Macho King lost, so she starts attacking him.
This was WrestleMania 7. It was the retire match between Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage, and Randy Savage lost, and Sherri
She was pissed.
She was peeved and actually attacked Macho King, and it was a really sad moment. One of the most dramatic professional wrestling storylines ever. It's hard to watch and not feel sympathy.
It was really heartfelt. And they kept cutting to Miss Elizabeth in the audience just watching this happen until she couldn't take anymore and ran in and threw Sherri by her hair off of him.
And then it was the reunion of Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth.
Yes.
Which led to, I believe, a match made in heaven, the only professional wrestling wedding that didn't end in shenanigans until...
Just divorce.
Number 3.
Number 3.
You know, James, sometimes you're a real loudmouth.
I'm the loudmouth. You're a loudmouth. You might as well be talking with a megaphone.
Which brings us to number 3, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Oh, Jimmy Hart, where to start with him?
Let's start with the clothes. By God, this guy was stylish.
Oh my gosh, he would bring 4 or 5 different suits to each and every event that he was a part of.
And they were all stoned or sequined to death, darling.
Or airbrushed.
That too.
Pick your style. Jimmy Hart had it. Jimmy Hart was involved in one of the first rivalries that actually brought professional wrestling into the mainstream in Memphis wrestling, where Jerry the King Lawler was feuding with Andy Kaufman.
Really?
He was. And
Jimmy Hart had a hand in that?
Jimmy Hart was the manager of Andy Kaufman in storyline, which garnered the attention of the World Wrestling Federation. And instead of signing Andy Kaufman on, because Andy Kaufman was already a star in his own right.
And a bit of a liability.
Bit of a liability. He had his own shitty talk show.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I love shitty talk shows.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We'll get there.
Yes. And anyway, so the World Wrestling Federation took on Jimmy Hart after being impressed with what he would do. And Jimmy Hart would carry a megaphone to the ring. And much in the same ways as Bill Alfonso, would interrupt matches by shouting things into it. I, for one, absolutely can't stand Jimmy Hart. But that's a testament to how great of a manager he actually is.
Yeah, he was a great heel, and he would get so much heat just from the littlest things. He managed the likes of adorable Adrian Adonis, who you may know from our gayest gimmicks.
He managed Intercontinental Champion Greg the Hammer Valentine. He led the Hart Foundation.
Yeah, Hart Foundation.
He was the only Hart who wasn't related to them, by the way. Interesting.
It seems fitting, though. Jimmy Hart, Hart Foundation. Makes sense.
It's like they were born for that. Yeah.
Now, on the topic of great men who've paved the way in the world of managing and wrestling, I think it's only fitting that we start with our
honorable mentions.
Mr. Fuji,
the Grand Wizard Ernie Roth,
Teddy Long,
Slick. Speaking of men who paved the way for professional wrestling to be where it is today, our number 2 goes to a man who is instrumental in shaping where the industry is now.
Exactly what we were talking about, yeah.
So our number 2 is Paul Heyman. What?
Paul Heyman?
We talked about this.
No, we discussed this. It was going to be Jim Cornette.
No, I said Paul Heyman, and that was that.
No. If we're talking about influence in the world of wrestling, Jim Cornette.
Ugh. But for every Rock and Roll Express Jim Cornette managed, he had a Mantar.
Oh, great. Why don't you just go and bankrupt in their company while you're at it?
Don't you have a Dairy Queen to write a Yelp review about?
Okay, let's sell this like adults. Give me reasons as to why Paul Heyman is so great.
Paul Heyman is fantastic. He has a career right now that is spanning 4 decades, starting in the 1980s as Paul E. Dangerously,
where he feuded with the likes of Missy Hyatt.
But he also was responsible for introducing WCW to the man, the myth, the legend that is Ravishing Rick Rude.
Okay, you got me there, all right.
Not to mention creating the foundation for what made wrestling dangerous, what made wrestling acceptable for men in their mid-20s to watch.
What made wrestling garbage and completely impossible to get anything over anymore. Oh, I'm sorry. What were you trying to say?
ECW was fantastic. ECW is the reason we're still watching wrestling to this day. And yes, they had tasteless storylines. ECW brought fantastic wrestling to America, featuring the likes of
The Sandman,
Tajiri, Eddie Guerrero,
New Jack,
Chris Jericho. He brought in Rey Mysterio.
And Nunzio.
Jazz.
And Jasmine St. Clair.
Yeah, okay. But I will say, Paul Heyman has had some fantastic storylines over the course of the past 10 years, including his storyline with the living legend that is CM Punk.
Okay.
And he is responsible for being the only thing that makes Brock Lesnar worth watching in 2018. I hate Brock Lesnar. Censor me. Brock Lesnar.
You're defeating your own point now.
I am.
All right, let me list off the accolades of why Jim Cornette is so great. He has had a career that's spanning from the 70s all the way through the 80s to early 90s.
Where he got his ass kicked in every single wrestling federation that he was in by both the fans and the wrestlers.
And some of the women, but you know what? We call that storytelling, folks.
We call it equality.
Yeah, so for every Missy Hyatt you had, he feuded with real women ballets like Baby Doll. Now you think your guys are hardcore. Jim Cornette has a rest record longer than most wrestlers.
He does. You're defeating your own purpose now, too.
Shit.
But could Jim Cornette ever get over in a major wrestling federation that wasn't Jim Crockett or Memphis Wrestling or Smoky Mountain?
I don't know. He was far too busy running wrestling promotions and getting them over. Oh, okay, Paul
What
Heyman.
Mantar? What Yokozuna?
Oh, please. It's just as many bad managing positions that Paul Heyman had.
Okay, Curtis Axel is an exception. He's not the rule.
I think we just have to agree to disagree.
We'll agree
Let's
to
call
disagree.
This a tie.
Yes, I will shake on that. Jim Cornette and Paul Heyman are our choices.
For number 2. Because they're the shit.
And also, seriously, if you haven't yet, listen to Jim Cornette talk about anything.
Join the cult of Cornette. It's a lot of fun.
It's fantastic. It's amazing. Can we finally agree as to our number 1? Do we have to argue anymore?
I think we're both in agreement on this one.
Okay. Number 1 is
Marlena. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
What?
I'm kidding. I was kidding.
Okay. Number 1 is Bobby the Brain Heenan. Oh, Bobby the Brain. Bobby the Brain is the pinnacle of managing.
Not to mention some of the best commentary we've ever gotten in wrestling.
Oh, he was funny, but he still made you hate him.
Yeah, he could get over the baby faces and still just insult the crap out of them. Like, he was some of the best color commentary you've ever heard.
Best color commentary. He was also responsible for Andre the Giant turning heel on Hulk Hogan, which is arguably the biggest storyline in professional wrestling history. And he continued to feud with Hulk Hogan for well over 2 years and returned to the feud when the Nature Boy, returned to the World Wrestling Federation, or joined the World Wrestling Federation in 1991.
For a spell.
Yes, Bobby the Brain Heenan, there really isn't much bad to say about him.
He's just iconic.
He is an icon. You know, I'm gonna say it. Bobby the Brain Heenan set the standard for what a heel should be in professional wrestling.
As far as managing goes, he knew how to get heat. He knew how to give heat. It was amazing.
Amazing. Oh, and it brings a tear to my eye to think that he had to end his career in TNA. Thank you guys so much for watching Queens of the Ring. Once again, my name is Sylvia Nyxx.
And I'm Jaymes Mansfield.
And we are Tagging Out.
Now, thank you. You. Bye.
Click here and see wrestling's weirdest tag team gimmicks. Or watch wrestling's gayest gimmicks. Come on, click it. If you don't click it, I'll dingle you in a shark cage above the ring. Click it!